All right. Who's having problems sleeping after this weekend? Have no fear. The Cleveland Cavaliers will be here. Welcome into the NBA tip off show here on a Monday as we get ready for game twos tonight around the association. Very important game twos. Nobody wants to go down 2-0 here, but not sure some of these teams tonight can do anything about it. And first up again is the always exciting Cleveland Cavaliers and the Orlando Magic as we welcome in double R1L. Steve Merril in the house, as is Mr. Cleveland himself. Excited. Bryan, power on a 6-0 NBA run here now. He is seeing it clear here, folks. But I don't know what else you can see besides an under. Merrill, I'm just going to say it. Let me get it out of the way. I can't imagine trying to sweat out an over with anything to do with the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Orlando Magic, my man. How about you?
I agree. I mean, the first game was extremely low scoring. A lot of times we do find value sometimes when you get extreme overs or unders from one game because they do bump it a couple points in that direction. But there really was nothing misleading about the low scoring game, and the matchup screams lead scores. So for me, I would have liked to see a misleading over, maybe when both teams shot lights out from three or from the field in general, and the pace was slow. We come back with an under, but we don't really get that here. The line's going to be a couple points lower now because of the 180 total on Saturday. I did have a strong best bet on Cleveland in game one for my clients at WagerTalk. Never in doubt. They had a 20-point lead. They never trailed the entire game. The zigzag could work here, so I'm staying off game two tonight for that reason. But Cleveland is my preferred side. In fact, I would love to see Orlando pull the upset so I could come back most likely with the Cavs in game three. Probably won't be the case, so I think Cleveland gets this win. They're going to be up 2-0, which means when they go back to Orlando, the odds maker is going to make that massive adjustment, as we always see in game three, in which the Magic will be a 4 to 6 point adjustment. They'll be a bigger favorite in the first half of the full game. We'll talk about that in a couple of days when game three circle around. But yeah, under 206.5 in the first game worked. This line's a couple baskets lower now, but for good reason. The pace really was slow, and the 180 was not misleading. You look at the shooting. Yes, the two teams shot below 27% from three, but even when I do a rescore, I got it in the 190s based on pace. So I still think there's some value with the under, and nothing changed from my perspective after game one.
Yeah, a whole lot of the size of the Cavs seemed to really bother anything Orlando wanted to do. But I swear, if I saw one more brick in that game, I was never going to watch another basketball game there, Brian Paracus. That was Donovan Mitchell trying to pass the ball off the back of the rim when it been the funniest thing I've seen in a very long time. But bottom line is they got the job done every time Orlando tried to make a run. Kudos to the Cavs. They answered it, but how much confidence do you have in the Cavs? They handle business at home. Orlando is much better at home than on the road. So if Orlando doesn't win this game tonight, is it pretty much lights out?
I don't know if it's lights out. I don't think Orlando's very good. We talked about that over the weekend, Joe. Now, you mentioned that Donovan Mitchell pass off the rim. That'll, of course, make Cleveland fans remember about the infamous wrong way Ricky Davis. I'm sure some people remember that when he tried bouncing it off the opposing backboard to get a rebound for himself so he could get a triple-double. And then they drafted LeBron next year, and Ricky thought LeBron was drafted to be support on his team. But that's a different story for a different day. Steve brought up the zigzag theory here. And Ralph Michaels had a tweet this morning that caught my eye. Round one, game two, home teams off the game one win. How have they done? Well, 30-7 straight up, 20-7, 27-10 against the number. We know home teams dominated these game ones, 8-0 straight up, 7-1 against the number. Orlando is not a team I am rushing to bet tonight. They probably can't shoot any worse than they did in game one. I understand that, Joe. The numbers were just atrocious. 32.6% overall, 21.6% from three, 63% from the free throw line. They are a bad free throw shooting team anyway, so that's not totally uncharacteristic. They had an 86.5 offensive rating, did the Magic. And again, Joe, they're just not a good offensive team. I look at things like their team total. I try to get creative with where could we see some offensive bounce back in this game? Well, the Magic's team total for tonight is 98.5. Do we really trust them to score 16 more points than they did Saturday? I do not trust them to do that. And to take it a step further, something I mentioned to you over the weekend on last call, Orlando's just not a good team. I think other than Miami, they're the worst team left in the entire playoffs. And Cleveland, I know we talked about this, Joe. A lot of fans want JB Bickerstaff gone. Donovan Mitchell, they think this is his swan song. But this is just a fortunate first-round draw for the Cavaliers. And you can see why they seemingly tanked that final game of the regular season. Now, even if the Cavs win the series, Bickerstaff could be gone. I was talking to some people here locally over the weekend. They think if the Cavs advance and got swept by the Celtics, that maybe Bickerstaff's job would not be safe. But look at game one. The Magic sort of remind me of the Cavs last year. Playoff neophyte that can't score. The Cavs, my goodness, they didn't play well in game one. And they still won by double digits, turned it over 17 times, shot 8 of 30 themselves from 3. I was kicking myself for not mentioning this with you over the weekend, Joe, on last call, because I did mention it on the Power 5, which you, of course, can find elsewhere here on the WagerTalk YouTube channel. But betting the Cavs in the first quarter, I know you love my first quarter bets, Joe. I think that's not a bad idea here. Orlando is bottom third in the league in first quarter net rating during the regular season. They played the Cavs 4 times this year now with Donovan Mitchell. All 4 times they have been outscored in the first quarter, twice by double digits. So if you really have a hankering to play this game tonight, I would say Cavs minus 1.5 in the first quarter. I'll look for the people there.
Yeah, well, you got some company there. I know Sean 6224 has got Cavs laying 1.5 in the first corner there. Welcome in, Sean. We appreciate it. Shout out to Big Daddy and company. Those of you joining us live here today on this Monday, game 2 in the NBA. We are off and running here with 3 games on tonight. Don't forget to hit that like button, as well as the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Become part of that WagerTalk TV family. As we try our best to make heads or tails of the Magic going 8 of 37 from 3 and the Cavs going 8 of 30. And the Cavs leading 3-point shooter. Did you have this on your bingo card? Mobley. Did you have Evan Mobley as the best 3-point shooter on the Cavs in that game? Because it started out in the first quarter, to your point there, BP, and boy, they were lighting it up, and it was really lights out from that point on.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's what's funny. You talk about, what was it, 8 of 30 that the Cavs, we said they shot for 3. Almost all of those 8 makes were in the first quarter. I think there was a stretch where they missed 16 or 17 in a row. Orlando kind of got back in it. I joked about this on the weekend show. My dad, of course, right on cue, texted me and said if the Cavs blow this game, Bickerstaff can't return for game 2. But they held on. They won. And again, even if Orlando improves offensively, I think there's room for the Cavs to improve offensively. But to your point that you started the show with and what Steve followed up with, I'm not in a rush to bet the over with these teams because it's defense first with both of them. And I just do not trust the Magic on offense.
No, it's kind of hard to trust either. Merril, I am seeing some questions and comments, though, regarding the zigzag theory in this particular series here. You've touched on this over the last couple of weeks in these spots. Are either of these teams in a situation, is this a series where you would look to go back and forth like that? Or do you think that maybe home court holds serve here?
Well, you brought up the point about Orlando being much better at home, and that's definitely been the case this season. You look at the Orlando Magic overall, and this is often the case with young upcoming teams. They're 18 and 24 on the road, 18 and 25 now, actually, or 18 and 24. That includes the playoff loss. 29 and 12, though, at home in the 41 regular season games. And something else that's interesting to point out is that they've been the best moneymaker in the NBA against the spread the last 2 years. They are 51 and 31 regular season this year. Oklahoma City Thunder was that team a couple years ago. No playoff wins, and now they're the number 1 seed, but we did see them struggle a little bit in their first playoff game last night. They were the one home favorite that barely won, despite being the number 1 seed. So I do think Orlando, kind of like Bryan said, is probably a couple years away, but this could be an up-and-coming team, and they're going to get their feet wet this year. Cleveland will win this series. So I'd prefer to have Cleveland in the zigzag if they do come off a loss at some point, just because they're the better team. And they're better than their 49 and 34 record because they had a lot of injuries down the stretch. But keep in mind, for a little bit of a spell there at the beginning of the year, around January, I think, what was it, like 16 out of 17? They had one of the best winning streaks, or winning runs, at least in the NBA all season. They're finally healthy. Donovan Mitchell's a superstar. He went off in game one. He also went off in the final two regular season games. So he's not a guy I'd want to get in front of right now. So the zigzag, I think, will work better if Cleveland comes off a loss at some point.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Orlando wants to get some of that home cooking going here, but this is going to be ugly here tonight in game two in Bryan's neck of the woods here. Shout out to Mac Lane Cheney over there on Instagram. Instagram was doing a little day drinking. I believe it was on Friday when they told us the Lakers we're going to win this series against the Denver Nuggets, if I recall. I think, Dan, that was it, right? Lakers were going to win the first game in Denver and then possibly close it out at LA in their own spot. That was they were a little boozy. I'm not going to lie there on in Instagram, not like you YouTube and X guys. You guys seem to have it together and nobody really believes in the Lakers. But what about an over 5.5 for Paolo assists tonight here? Is that a play we're being asked here before we run to the Lakers and to Denver there? Let's see if we can get – he's the only guy that can do anything for Orlando. At least he's the only guy I think that can generate enough offense. Do we trust him, BP, to dish it out here tonight? Got to get other people involved. Otherwise, Orlando they're going to score 80 points and they're going to lose, in 4.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to beat a dead horse here. I'm not looking to bet any Orlando player props over. I'm just not seeing it. I mean, I know that it was kind of bottom of the like we laid out the numbers. It was bottom of the barrel. As a matter of fact, I think with the exception of Paolo and Mo Wagner, the shooting was abhorrent. I think it was like somewhere in the 20% the rest of the team. But I'm just not looking to back any of these guys. I think Orlando is just really going to struggle to score. So I wouldn't want to be betting any of those offensive props over on the Magic side. Just wouldn't want to do it.
I would just look for turnovers and missed shots. Is there a prop for the amount of missed shots you can have in a game? Because I think Orlando might set some records there. We do have some drinking in the YouTube chat room now, apparently. Lakers money line tonight, we're being told here. So let's take a look at this game as game number 2 between Denver, the champs, and the Lakers. Oddly enough, kind of where we were in the first game, right? 7.5, somewhere in that ballpark is what we saw. It did pop down to about 6.5, Merril, before tip in game 1. And right to script, we've seen this. We've seen this movie before with these two teams. Lakers come out, they have a lead. Second half comes, they no longer have a lead, especially in the fourth quarter. It's kind of rinse and repeat. We always say it, right? If it ain't broke, we ain't fixing it here. Are you seeing anything that would lead us to believe otherwise than exactly that same script here tonight?
Well, the one thing the Lakers do a lot better than Orlando, a couple things. First of all, they've got experience. They've got perhaps the best postseason player in history in LeBron James. I know Michael Jordan's up there as well. It's one of the 2 best. Jordan was pretty amazing, but LeBron's done it with 3 different teams, and he does turn it on in the postseason. They've also got Anthony Davis, another all-star, potential Hall of Famer if he stays healthy enough. I mean, he's got the talent to do it. Orlando doesn't have anything like that, and they also have that experience because of it. But the other thing LA does a lot better than, say, Orlando is offense. We talked about how awful offensively the Magic are. The Lakers that is not their problem. In fact, they average more points per game, and they have a better shooting percentage from the field, from 3-point range, from the free throw line than the Nuggets. So the Lakers can beat anybody when they're scoring. They average almost 50% shooting on the season. But the defense is suspect at times, and that is obviously why they blew the 12-point lead in game 1. But it shows they can compete. I know the Nuggets have won 9 straight, but 8 of those 9 wins have been by 11 points or less. In fact, 7 of the 9 have been, or 6 of the 9, I believe, have been single digits, including last year, games 1 and 2 of the playoffs, the Western Conference Finals. The Nuggets won 4 games to none, but the Nuggets did not cover either games 1 or 2 at home. So I do think you can make a case for the zigzag in this one. Something else that's interesting to point out about the Lakers, and it's not a fluke because they get to the line as much as almost anybody in the league. Denver's at the bottom half as far as getting to the free throw line, which is strange to me, by the way, with big guys like Jokic, Gordon down low. But all last of those last 9 losses for the Lakers, the 9 straight, they've had more free throw attempts in every one of those games, including 17 for 19 on Saturday night, while the Nuggets at home in a win only went 5 for 6 from the free throw line. I mean, there's 2 ways to look at that. The Nuggets won by 11 and they only had 6 free throw attempts. I guess that's kind of bad news maybe for the Lakers. But it also shows, I think, that the Lakers can hang in this game because Denver was plus 21 points from 3-point range and they only won by 11. So the Lakers outscored them by 10 from 2-point range in the free throw line. So it's really going to come down to if Denver's hitting 36% of their 42 3-point attempts again. If not, I think the Lakers can stay close.
Well, all right, we got Lakers here close. They do keep it close. BP for about 3 quarters. It's usually close, and then they run out of gas. They're sucking wind. And by the way, and I would just correlate it. If D'Angelo Russell doesn't have a night, Lakers aren't winning. So just correlate those 2 things. If you think Lakers are going to win, then it better be, because how many more times do we have to see the Lakers? It all comes down to LeBron playing 40-plus minutes, AD playing 40-plus minutes, and D'Angelo Russell going 6 of 28 from 3 in a game. It's just rinse and repeat here. So does D'Angelo Russell get it done for them here tonight and finally get off the schneid and beat a Denver team that they haven't beaten in for how long has it been now? 2 years?
Yeah, I think it was January of 2023 was the last time that they have beaten Denver. You guys both harped on last year's Western Conference Finals, lack of support, Joe, Russell and otherwise. That was an issue in the Western Conference Finals last year. It was an issue in Game 1. Outside of LeBron and Anthony Davis, the rest of the Lakers scored just 44 points in Game 1. But I think a common theme for me with these 3 games we've got tonight is I don't know how much better the underdogs can play than they did in Game 1 or where the sort of positive regression comes for them. And at the same time, the favorite has negative regression. Let's open up the Game 1 box score, guys. The Lakers had 18 first half points from LeBron. They get a double-double from Davis. Steve mentioned Denver only getting to the free throw line 6 times for the whole game, which isn't completely uncharacteristic for them. Yet it was still, the game ends up being decided by double digits. And Porter Jr. and Jokic are the only 2 Nuggets starters that shoot better than 50% from the field. Denver's beaten them 9 straight times now, obviously. We've all said that. And I don't see that streak coming to an end in Game 2. Yes, the Lakers have been competitive mostly in this stretch. And usually it's interesting that they're competitive early, but I'm looking at this. I might want to lay the 3.5 with Denver in the first half. I think maybe they smell blood in the water. They come out and they just want to break the Lakers' spirit tonight. Despite the fact Denver went into the break with the deficit in Game 1. I mean, very uncharacteristic. I was shocked they gave up 60 in the first half, the Nuggets. But they're still, Denver, plus 5.2 points per game in the first half at home this season. That's very good. Again, the Lakers are generally competitive, so I'm not really in the mood here to lay 7, but I wouldn't mind laying 3.5 in the first 24 minutes with the world champs in this one.
Ooh, all right. We got some questions in the chat room about this, and we got a lot of Titan CT's got an interesting one. Nuggets -2 in the first quarter. We are seeing a lot of love for maybe the Lakers in the first half, Merril. When you have such a history of the same thing happening here with these 2 teams, right? Repeat playoff opponents, and the games always end up the same way. Is it better to cut these games in half? Is it better to just look at the Lakers in the first and maybe look at Denver in the second half, or maybe even the fourth quarter? Or we're all going to watch this game tonight and go, I can't believe it. They did it again. Lakers were great in the first half and they ran out of steam in the fourth quarter.
Well, I mean, the altitude is a concern because you've got an aging LeBron. So, I mean, the altitude and thin air of Denver would make some sense, actually, if you like the Lakers to play them earlier sooner than later. What's interesting, though, is we talk about that 4-game sweep last year in the Western Conference Finals. Denver, once again, as I mentioned, won games 1 and 2, but failed to cover both of them, single-digit wins. But Game 1 last year was not the way this one played out. In fact, Denver had an 18-point lead at halftime last year and only won by 6. So the Lakers actually came back in the second half. And in that Game 2, Denver only won by 5 points, failed to cover again. the Lakers were leading outright by 5 at the half. So we'll see how this one plays out. The Lakers, of course, had a 3-point lead the other night, got outscored by 14 in the second half. By the way, the 9 straight wins began in January of last year. The last Denver loss was actually December 16th, 2022. So the calendar year they didn't win last year, which is pretty crazy. Couple props. It's funny you mentioned D'Angelo Russell, Joe, because I used him in my video. And by the way, everybody, I'm doing a daily video for every playoff game every day for the next 2 months. All 3 games today were broken down overnight. I'm trying to do a lot of player props in those videos since I don't talk about them a lot elsewhere. And I use the zigzag for player props as well. And D'Angelo Russell's a guy that did pop on my radar. And I recommended him in the video to go over 16.5 points. And one of the reasons is what you mentioned, Joe, that he didn't shoot well, but he got a lot of shots. And what that tells you is that he's going to probably be open again. And since he didn't really hurt the Nuggets, they're not going to look to shut him down. As you said, he was only 6 for 20, but he was only 1 for 9 from 3-point range. You know, if he hits anywhere near his average of, say, just 33% even, that's an extra 6 points right there. And instead of 13 points, he easily has 19. He got to 13 with terrible shooting and still almost got over the 15.5. It's now up to 16.5. So I think the odds makers in the betting market understand that. And this is a guy that's still averaging 17.5 over his last 10. So I like Russell over, and I agree that probably correlates with liking the Lakers as well, as I said. One guy I'll mention also on the Denver side, did not talk about him in my video, but the more I was looking into it today, Michael Porter Jr., you mentioned he had a decent game in game 1, and he did. He had 19 points. He went over his 16.5. He's still averaging just 15.5 points his last 10. The total's now been bumped to 17.5. And you talk about some off-court distractions. Don't forget his brother, Jonte, he's the one that's suspended for life from the Raptors. And his younger brother just got convicted, I believe, to 6 years in prison for a vehicular manslaughter or whatever they call it. He killed somebody in a crash last year. He was in court on Friday for that. So, yeah, he played well Saturday, but you got to wonder now if that letdown happens here in game 2 after the emotional week, after a win, after a decent game. So I think Porter Jr. could be worth a look under 17.5 for that reason tonight.
You got to love the chat room. You guys are out. Catch You Slipping is on fire right now in the chat room. He is literally laying out a timeline of every big moment over the last couple of years that the Lakers have been involved with, and Denver was the opponent and kicked their ass. The Kobe statue, I believe, was it when LeBron got his 40,000th point, 40K. Those points. He is literally laying out the timeline that every time they've tried to celebrate something, Denver was the opponent, and they ended up smoking them. So it has not been a great run for the Lakers against these Nuggets. We'll see if that continues here tonight. All right, we do have one more game on the board here tonight, and I do see a lot of interest in the chat rooms here about the Knicks taking on the Sixers here. And what we know right now, and this was obviously interesting this morning, everyone woke up. Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey were listed as questionable. I believe they're both still questionable, but unless there is something crazy going on, I doubt very much they won't play in this game. Now, Maxey apparently he's questionable with an illness, but I would imagine, like we've seen in many, many other playoff situations with guys at the flu, like Michael Jordan and everything else, the IVs will be hooked up and these guys will give it a go. So, but the number has just kept going that way here, BP. I mean, what, 4, 4.5, then 5, 5.5. It was as high as 6 this morning, and now we've seen it come back here a little bit, somewhere around right in the middle here. The bottom line is, let's just assume they're going. Everything that ruined the Sixers against the Knicks in that game, a lot of that stuff is fixable, right? Don't give up 23 offensive rebounds, and you might give yourself a chance to play. So the question is, how much faith do you have in the Sixers to be able to get this done here tonight and head back to Philly, knotted up one apiece?
Well, the problem with that rebounding issue, Joe, is the Knicks, it's not just a one-game sample size. This is an elite offensive rebounding team. I believe they led the league in offensive rebounds during the regular season, while Philadelphia was in the bottom third in defensive rebounding. So that issue may persist. And let's just say, yeah, Embiid and Maxey play. They're not going to be 100%. Embiid's knee's clearly an issue. Tyrese Maxey is look, he's not going to be Michael Jordan against Utah. He's just not. And I know I've had great success so far in these playoffs betting on teams where the market overreacted to injuries. Yesterday, we cashed with the Bucks, we cashed with the Clippers, we cashed with the Pelicans. But if Embiid and Maxey are hindered, I think the Sixers might be up against it here. So it's another matchup where I'd caution about leaning into the zigzag theory. Now, obviously, I'm not going to expect a repeat performance from the Knicks bench like we saw in game one. But the thing is, any negative regression from the Knicks reserves, I think gets canceled out by positive regression from the Knicks starting five. The Knicks not a single Knicks starter finished with a positive plus minus, Joe, in game one. I think that starting five is going to play better tonight. And this morning, as you may have heard on WagerTalk TV's new morning show with myself and Mark Zinno, we gave out a player prop, Dante DiVincenzo, over 15.5 points. This is one I like. Game one was the first time in 3 months DiVincenzo did not score in double figures. He came into the playoffs averaging more than 20 points per game in April. So he is the one, Nick, in particular, that I think has a bounce back effort tonight. I would count on a much better collective effort from that Knicks starting five, DiVincenzo in particular.
Ooh, going with Diva. Yeah, he kind of, what's the word? Sucked on a lot of levels in that game. Not great. But again, in a lot of these spots here, Merril, when you look at it, I mean, obviously the big difference was 3-point shooting, especially down the stretch for the Knicks, right? They were fantastic. 16 to 35, I believe, in the game. They really didn't have an answer for it. They kept letting Josh Hart do whatever he wanted to do. They dared him to shoot it from the outside, and he did, and he made them, and he buried them. I would have to imagine they're going to make some adjustments here, and I also think they're going to try to get to the foul line more in this game, Steve, because they didn't get to the foul line nearly enough in game one. I think they can get there a lot here tonight, and I think that's how they're going to want this game to go.
Yeah, it does jump out to you when you see the Knicks shot just 39.5% from the field, and they still scored 111 points and won. And like you said, the reason is because they were plus 12 from 3-point range. They got outscored otherwise. In fact, Philly was plus 8 from 2-point range, and the Knicks shot very poorly from down low, and the starters had something to do with that. So we'll see if that continues. Embiid, though, is such an unknown. The knee is an injury. He's not healthy. It's just a matter of what he can do. He still had a nice game overall, 29 points, but only had 8 rebounds and was just 8 for 22 shooting and only 2 from 8 from 3. He was 11 from 12 from the line. So if they don't put him on the free throw line as much, I think he's going to have a tough time scoring. Obviously, a lot of uncertainty, but and they do have props on him. And keep in mind, the player props are always like, if he doesn't play, it's a refund. But if he plays at all and then he comes out or gets hurt, there's some intrinsic value to the under for that reason. I'm seeing some 30.5s for total points out there. The last game closed 29.5. He ended up with 29. He ended up with 23 against Miami. The play-in game, points and rebounds is about 40.5, 41 right now. Closed at 40.5 the last 2 games. He ended up with 37 and 38. I think, if anything, he's less healthy now. So I do think the Embiid prop unders are worth a look. Even if he plays, I'm not sure he gets there. And if he gets bumped out anytime early, it's basically an automatic winner. Same with Maxey. Maxey had a huge game, 33 points the other night. In fact, these two guys had over 60% of the combined points. So that's why it's really hard to trust Philly here in the zigzag. But on the surface, if they were healthy, they'd be a great zigzag candidate because they are a Class A team when healthy. In fact, in the regular season, they were 31-8 with Embiid this season, as opposed to 17-28 without him. 31-8 versus 17-28. One of the best teams in the league, a Class A team, but then a below 500 team without him. That's how important the true MVP is this lineup. Knicks, by the way, also had one of the best runs in the league, turn of the year, when they made that 2-for-1 trade with Toronto. And with Anunoby in the lineup, they are now 23-6 straight up going back to January 1st, and they are healthy. So these are two teams that could be pretty dangerous. I just think the Knicks are more dangerous now because they are healthy. And that's, I don't like to play into these line moves based on injuries because playing against them have been kind of moneymakers the last couple of years. But once again, the under's gone from 209 down to 204.5. Hard not to see this being a low-scoring game. We remember those stinkers they had earlier this year. I know there were some injuries, key players missing, but still, a month ago, 152 points followed by 185 a couple days later. I think the under still is where the value is, even with that line move down.
Don't remind me. I mean, I broke out in hives watching that. What was it, overtime when it was like 65-65 heading into it was just Embiid. It wasn't back yet. It was one of the most disgusting games we have seen in a long time. We know they're both capable of it. But also, BP, when you look at maybe some of the team totals here, we've seen the market come crashing in this total, dropping at what, 5.5 points here. Okay, so what wins? Does 100 win this game? Are we getting two teams over 100? Because if we're not, well, then one of these team totals is going to come woefully short.
Well, I'll say this. The Sixers scored 104 points in game one. That's the most points they've scored in any game against the Knicks this year. 5 head-to-head meetings. They have not topped 104. Now, Embiid did miss 3 of them, but he had a great game, not only in game one, but the one regular season game he played against the Knicks. Philadelphia got blown out at home by 30-plus points. So, I mean, the 92, 96, 79, 79, and 104. That's how many points the Sixers have scored in 5 head-to-head meetings with the Knicks. So, yeah, it's hard to say with not only Embiid not 100%, but Maxey sick. I would not be rushing to bet the Sixers over their team total. I'll tell you that much. And then the Knicks, again, they might shoot better overall, but do we think they're going to shoot 45% from 3 again, especially based on who was the really productive guys from behind the arc? No, we probably do not. And there was, a decent amount of free throws made in that game. So, no, I certainly would not look to bet either of these teams over their team total. I would concur with both yourself and Steve that under is probably the way I would play a total in this matchup.
Mitchell Robinson, 12.5 points and rebounds. The man was an absolute machine, Merril, in that I couldn't get over how good he really was and what a difference he made there banging around. He was grabbing everything here. It feels like 12.5 might be a number worth looking at here, because if the Sixers can't adjust to the boards that they got absolutely destroyed on, man, he was a big part of that reason for the Knicks, too. I mean, how much can you really get better at dominating the boards? Is it just an effort thing, Merril, in your mind? Or are the Knicks just healthier, faster, bigger? What do you think we got going on here?
Well, I think a large part of that is kind of what you're hinting at, and that's that, your center, your MVP center is not 100%. And I mentioned how he got a lot of his points at the free throw line, but did not shoot well from 3, didn't shoot well from the field, did not get to 10 rebounds. This is Embiid I'm talking about, of course. So I do think that opens it up for Robinson. And let's not forget about Josh Hart. He had a pretty good rebounding game as well.
Yeah.
He had double-digit rebounds for the Knicks. And it's interesting about Hart because he was the leading scorer, leading rebounder in that meeting back in March. I think it was the second one of those back-to-back games. So Hart's had some good games against Philly, including game one. Normally I look for a guy that had 17 points or less in like 8 or 9 straight games before that to regress. But his total is only 12.5, and he had 22, and he could have another good game. But, yeah, Hart's another guy that stepped up and played better than expected.
Yeah, I do think there's definitely some props there in that game that you guys can definitely hone in on. I think Brunson will be due for a better game. And when you look at it, Philly outscored the Knicks 34-25, I think it was, in the first quarter. Kind of blitzed them there. And then, of course, we had Embiid leave there for a little while with the knee injury. Maybe that's not a bad look there either, BP, is get the Sixers. You figure they're going to come out with some fire, right? Get them early, because if Embiid leaves the game and doesn't come back late, you don't want to be anywhere near holding anything with a Sixers ticket. So them in the first quarter, maybe even the first half, might not be a bad situation either, unless you think the Knicks are running away with this thing and it's over by half. Oh, is this where we
I
do
love that idea.
Oh, I love it. I love the Knicks.
Cleveland is a great city. The Cavaliers are
Trying
awesome.
to be a broadcast professional. I was clearing my throat. All right. Anyway, I was saying that the Knicks have won the rebounding battle in all 5 games, so I wouldn't expect that to change. I have seen, Joe, a lot of love for the Knicks in the first half. I don't necessarily disagree with that. But let's talk about the Sixers, guys. Steve mentioned the record with Embiid. It's obviously very good. Had Embiid been healthy for the full season, this would have probably been a top 4 seed in the East. But remember, in the play-in game, Joe, I know you remember, against your Miami Heat, the Sixers were down by double digits early. So I don't know. They haven't been necessarily sharp since the postseason started, if you want to call the play-in tournament the postseason. So I don't know. They got and again, a bad start that was. So I don't know. Maybe you cut the game in half, and the Sixers obviously don't want to go down 0-2, so they should theoretically come out motivated. But I really do worry about the health of Embiid and Maxey. And as we've talked about, they didn't get a lot else from anybody. So I'm not running to bet Philadelphia in this one. I'll stick with my DiVincenzo prop over. I think that's the best
go with the get a nice pot of Brajol. He's good to go. Cash the ticket. You're ready to roll there. BP. Interesting. I don't know what that first quarter line is for Philly and the Knicks, but that would be about as far as I'd be willing to look with anything as far as the Sixers go, because the comments and the quotes coming out from the Sixers are, oh, we can't get him off the court. He's a warrior. Which you're basically telling me the guy is not 100%. He's gutting it out. And at any minute, Merril, he can be ripped off the floor. So quite honestly, under points, under rebound, I think you were spot on this. Maybe the best bets in this game is fade Embiid as much as you can.
Yeah, when I did my video overnight, we didn't really see a prop market for Embiid. I just checked here as we're doing this show. I was surprised to see those available. And I guess the odds makers figure, well, if he doesn't play, they're null and void. But the thing is, I think he is going to play, and I don't think he's healthy. So there's just so much intrinsic value to the under if something goes wrong. And even if he plays, he hasn't gotten to these numbers for the most part recently. So, yeah, I think there's some value with Embiid's under. Something else I'll point out is you can always do in-game betting. I mean, I'm not using the best bet in this game tonight. There's too much uncertainty for me. But we can obviously wait to see it start, see how Embiid looks out there early on, and you can get some in-game wagers maybe. The problem, though, is he's still just a play away, I think, from wearing out and getting injured. That's kind of what happened in game one. He got banged up in the first half and wasn't the same. The bigger question for me would be Maxey, how sick he really is, what he looks like early on. But even then, he might wear out. The IV might wear off, whatever he's on in the second half. I'm kind of talking myself into a Knicks second half play, perhaps, or an in-game bet on the Knicks in the second half, because keep in mind, this is all automated. It's AI, it's bots, so that is where you can have that human element sneak in there and find some edges. If you see Embiid and Maxey starting to look like they're wearing down, maybe pull the trigger with the Knicks in-game, like third quarter or fourth quarter, whenever it's happening.
I love that. Yeah, I believe, and I think the comment in the chat rooms was Larry Love 170. Just a couple of quick hard fouls on Embiid, and then we should call it a series and just send him back to the locker room there. But Charles Oakley might suit up tonight, maybe handle a little business there, Merril, tonight. Make sure Embiid doesn't make it to the second quarter. And
Van Gundy can grab onto his leg.
Yeah.
Drag him across the court. Yep, exactly.
That was Alonzo Mourning, I thought. Wasn't that Alonzo Mourning that he did it to? Yes.
That was
Alonzo. It was the Miami Heat. It was the late 90s.
Heat.
It was like my second year in the business. I still vividly, it was like, in fact, I'll tell you exactly. It was 97, I believe. And I vividly remember watching that still. He was just being dragged along during a ruckus between the Heat and Knicks. And you see, it was what I keep saying, Stan. Who's the one that does the announcer? I get him confused. The Orlando Magic guy, Stan. Jeff Van Gundy. Jeff was the one, the older brother. But for those of you that are under 25, Google Jeff Van Gundy, Alonzo Mourning leg fight. It's one of the best images ever. I'm sure Dan or Eric will find that within a minute here.
Just him holding on for dear life, man. It was just some of the funniest stuff we have seen in a very, very long time. All right, we got some questions and comments here. We'll run through them. And again, want to thank you guys for taking the time to join us here live today on the NBA Tip-Off Show. Go ahead, hit that thumbs up if you could. We'd certainly appreciate it. 3 games coming up here tonight. And we are getting a lot of questions. And I know Timothy wants to know, Steve, bottom line, in the Cavs game, what should I do? Are you leaning one way or the other? I think we all agree the totals, some total, whether it be team total, first half, full game, Is that the best way to look as instead of trying to predict the side?
Yeah, look, I'm Magic team totals under or pass for me in this whole series, most likely. My only concern with that is that the Magic are the team coming off a loss, off a blowout loss. Teams do sometimes bounce back here, but that'd be the only way to play it. I do have a prop, which I mentioned in my standalone video earlier overnight, and I forgot to get to it when we were talking about this game earlier. But I do like, and Bryan actually hinted on this. I'm in no hurry to play Orlando players over because they're just an ugly offensive team. With that said, one guy I think you can maybe take a chance with an over prop tonight is Jalen Suggs over 13.5 points. I'm sorry, over 11.5 points. That's what his closing total was in game one. He got to 13, and that's despite having a really bad shooting night. He was just 4 for 16, 1 for 7 from 3, and he still got to 13 points and still got over his total going just 1 for 7 from 3. I think he'll get a lot of shots. For some reason, that matchup works against the Cavaliers, and the fact he didn't really hurt them and Banchero did, I think the Cavs will probably focus on Banchero more, and I think Suggs could get up and over 11.5 once again.
That's kind of like that, guys. Again, that's going to be the 7 o'clock Eastern time game. Kind of love. I just don't see Orlando in any way, shape, or form getting to 100 points. What did we say the team total was there, BP, for Orlando tonight? Was the answer too much?
Yes, it was 90,
yes.
98.5 is what it is.
No,
actually,
no.
It's up to 9. It's up to 99.5 at some places. So yeah, if 100 obviously is a solid benchmark, and yeah, I would concur with you, Joe, which I know will momentarily shift the world off its axis.
Yeah, no, stop. You know what else is a good benchmark? Orlando not getting to 100 points. Fantastic benchmark there in this game. Brunson assist and rebound combo on FanDuel over 10.5 there. And I don't hate that either. I tend to think he might have a better scoring night than anything else here, right, BP, tonight? I think Brunson might look to hit the points in some way, shape, or form there. I think maybe even his threes, I think he's going to be slated to have a better night from a point perspective in here, BP. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I highlighted DiVincenzo earlier, but again, I think the problem for Philadelphia is collectively the Knicks starters are going to play better in game 2 than they did in game 1.
Yes.
The reserves, I do not expect, obviously, to play as well in game 1. That was an otherworldly effort that you're not going to get. Of course, bench players always tend to play better at home than on the road. So, yeah, I would be looking at the entire Knicks starting 5 at overs. We talked about how it's all mostly unders for Orlando players. Well, with the Knicks starting 5 in particular, I would be trying to find some edges there and bet the overs, because all of those guys, not one of them had a positive plus minus rating in game 1. I think we're going to see multiple bounce back efforts from that group tonight at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, we got Dennis he's all over to the Embiid under PRA here. Love that, Dennis. I think that's, hey, he comes out and drops 50 or, has the game of his life, like a Jordan moment, by all means, God bless. But something tells me 2 minutes left in the first quarter, his ass will be back in the locker room. We are also seeing, interesting enough, I'm getting Instagram, I'm getting Nuggets first quarter money line. So when you look at that, Merril, we talked about this earlier. I've seen that actually a couple of times, people believing the Nuggets early, which follows the script from a year ago in that series where it was Nuggets were good, but then in the second and third quarter, they would fall behind and then have to come back in the fourth quarter here. If you're the Nuggets, do you think they want to step on the Lakers ASAP, or do you think they hold back here a little bit? And maybe it's the Lakers you go with early and often here.
Yeah, I think the one concern with the Lakers, obviously, Agent LeBron, is the altitude and thin air, and they did have a double-digit lead in the first half in game 1. So I think if you like the Nuggets, I would personally say you play the full game, because I think you can make a case they're used to playing at home. They're the younger, fresher team as well. And the Lakers have come out strong at times early in the game. They did it in game 1. They did it in game 2 last year when they lost, but did cover this situation after a loss in game 1. So I could see both sides of it, but I think the altitude and thin air of the Mile High City would actually hurt the Lakers more as the game goes, not early on in it.
Yeah. Also, we're being asked triple double here, BP, for the man Jokic. We get it here tonight. You think another monster effort, or are we looking at Jamal Murray getting it done? Who, by the way, I'm not quite sure he's 100% either. But some of the shots that Jokic was making, I don't even know how you can defend any better. I mean, the shots he was making in the paint around the room with Anthony Davis in his face, LeBron coming over to help, and he's still making these shots here. Could this be the triple-double dagger tonight for Jokic?
A lot of things have to go right for that, so I'm not looking. Murray is a guy who can bounce back. What did he shoot, like 9 of 24 or something? It was really bad in game one. I talked about how Jokic and Porter were the only two starters to be above 50% for Denver. So I actually, I know Jokic getting a triple-double seems more fun, and you can brag more if it cashes. But looking at Murray over props, I think actually there's certainly more room for positive variance there.
Yes, I think absolute positive variance there. All right, I think it's only fair, guys, here as we look at these three games tonight to come up with an old shits and giggles parlay here. I think we can throw a little something against the wall here. We do have a whole lot of folks here in the chat room that have some thoughts here. Denver seems to be a big one here. We also, it's split. I'm still seeing 76ers love, but I guess that maybe that's Dan on a couple of burner accounts in there trying to represent the Sixers in the chat room as best he can. It's because nobody else seems to want to back them here. Is it a sweep? Let me ask you this, Merril. Is it a sweep for the favorites here tonight? Is that maybe the best way to approach, or what is the best dog here to go with to win out?
Yeah, I'll say definitely it's not a sweep, but I guess if we're talking money lines, we're getting 5.5, 5.5, and 7-point favorites, so they could all win straight up. But I'd be shocked. After the favorites went 8-0 straight up, 7-1 against the spread, or the home teams at least did in game one. I'm not seeing that happening again. The Clippers, of course, were a home dog, so we have to say home teams, but that would be the home teams tonight are all favored. Yeah, we know how this plays out. There's no correlation, but the public does seem to overreact. And it's interesting you mentioned Philly because public indicators I was looking at, by the way, Philly, the most public side of the three games, the only public dog is the Sixers. And of the three totals, the public usually leads towards the overs in all these games, even though we've seen a lot of low-scoring unders recently. The Laker-Nugget game, by the way, the most public over of the three. So Sixers and then the over in the Nuggets-Lakers game, I'd say were the two most public plays for Monday.
BP, who would you go with if you had to throw one in there? Would it? Are you looking all chalk here tonight, or if you had to guess, where are you throwing in a dog here tonight to get it done?
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't think any of the underdogs are going to win outright tonight. I just don't. I think that, we talked about how the zigzag theory really isn't a thing from game one to game two, the tweet that I brought up earlier from our own Ralph Michaels. So, yeah, I wouldn't be rushing. I know people want to do that. It's always fun to, bet the dog on the money line. I cannot in good conscience recommend any of these three underdogs on the money line tonight. I just can't. I think we may very well be looking at 3-0-2 deficits that the home teams are facing when these series reconvene on Thursday. And I think then there may be some value because Steve talked about how the books, they're obviously very sharp and they're going to, set those lines like pretty crazy where it's going to be hard to find value. But I don't know. To me, Orlando, Philly, and the Lakers, I would be looking more at them if they are down 0-2 at home in full-on desperation mode than I am here tonight.
One other thing, because we're talking about this in the chat room. Are either of you guys shocked with how many unders we have seen thus far? Because Merril, I go back to the All-Star break, and all we got there was a whole lot of ole, not a whole lot of defense going on. But all of a sudden, each one of these teams are defensive juggernauts. Isn't that ironic, Merril, how we get to this time of year now? And Clippers? What the hell was that? Where's that been without Kawhi Leonard? But are you shocked that you have seen the level of unders that we have thus far?
Yeah, I think we have to look at how we've gotten here. And like with the financial markets, moves don't just happen overnight. Sometimes we see shocks, like we saw that tremendous underrun for a couple of days after the All-Star break, but it usually plays out. Things unwind over several months. And it'd been several years with higher scoring totals, higher scoring games on average the last couple of years than we've ever had in the history of the NBA. And I think it got to where the odds makers were just vastly overinflating the totals. And then we did start to see more defense in the second half of the season as we got towards playoff seeding and towards the playoffs. And the betting markets had just overextended themselves so extreme the last year or so, I think, with high totals that's why more unders were cashing. But then look at tonight. We have a 203.5 and a 204.5 in two of the three games tonight. We didn't have anything like that all season, the regular season. In fact, the three of us were on like a month ago when it was like maybe the Orlando or Minnesota game. One of those games had like a 208. I remember Bryan said that's the lowest total of the season. So we have two totals tonight out of three games that are lower than any total we had almost all year in the regular season. So the books have corrected now, and I would think we're going to start to see a 50-50 balance, maybe some overs. So, yeah, I think the blindly playing the under thing is gone. We saw the play-in games get bet down 7 to 8 points in some situations, and they still stayed under. But those were in the 220s. Those two games last Tuesday, the Western Conference games were in the mid-220s. They got bet down 4 or 5 points. They landed in the two teens. Now we have a 203 and a 204, like I keep saying. So I think the market is caught up, but we have to remember why we got here, and that's because we had a good year or so where the market wasn't caught up and they had to over-adjust to the overs. Now it's the other way around.
Yeah, it's really intriguing, isn't it there, BP? We all of a sudden we got a whole lot of defensive, juggernauts here in the NBA. We'll see if that continues here tonight. We got 3 more games, of course, again tomorrow. And just to confirm here, BP, where I believe it was Lee wanted to know first quarter lane 2 against Cleveland. He wanted your approval on that one.
Laying 2 with Cleveland, I say yes, absolutely. I co-sign with that. Orlando's not a good first quarter team. Will the Cavs be hitting threes in the first quarter the way they did on Saturday? Probably not, but history suggests that Orlando's a slow starter and they just don't have a lot of offense. Just to the previous discussion, I'll add this. The most points any losing team scored in game 1 was 104 from Philadelphia. So if you're confident in a team losing tonight, I would probably look to actually bet them under their team total because, and it's not just increased intensity on the defensive end, guys. You brought up that Dallas game, how absurd that was. I was very happy to see it. I had the Clippers, but it was just a lot of bad shooting, right? I mean, that Oklahoma City, New Orleans game last night, I mean, guys were just missing open threes. So, I mean, my good, even Milwaukee, Indiana was not immune to the low-scoring trend. You would have thought if any game could go over, it'd be those two who typically play with no defense and a high pace. But, yeah, I mean, I think that's something I'd like to throw in a closing salvo, if you will, that if you definitely think a team's going to lose tonight, maybe look at them under their team total because no losing team over the weekend scored more than 104.
Yeah, no, it's kind of crazy here tonight. We'll see if that all of those trends start to reverse themselves. Big shout out to, we got a big vote here. Stephen Kennedy, always a pleasure to see you. Timothy's going Knicks Cavs for his money line parlay here tonight. Don't hate that. Also, those of you on Instagram that are still drinking, a little day drinking, the Lakers are not winning this series. I hate to bring it to you. I don't know what it is with all these Laker fans on Instagram, but they absolutely love LeBron and company. But they got to get this one here tonight. We'll have to see if they can do that. Don't forget, Merril locked and loaded here tonight on your page at WagerTalk.
Yes, perfect 4-0 sweep on Saturday and Sunday in baseball and basketball combined. A 3-0 sweep already to start the NBA playoffs. Already 3-0 after Saturday and Sunday. So might want to check me out tonight on Monday because I've got 2 more best bets as we go for our 3rd straight 2-0 sweep tonight on Monday. 1 baseball, 1 basketball. And number 1 all-time in the NBA in the history of WagerTalk, including number 1 again this season in Units 1. So might want to check out the rest of the NBA playoffs or that buy 7, get 3 free, 10 days for just $99. And that offer expires tonight on Monday. This is absolutely your last chance to get 10 days for the price of 7. That's every baseball and basketball best bet for the next 10 days and nights. Just $99, including both best bets tonight. And oh, yeah, bonus free baseball plays on my page right now as well. Steve Merril, WagerTalk.com.
Oh, gotta love it there. Also, big shout out to Cannon Dodd. He sends the peace sign there, Merril, to you. Yeah,
is he really in there again? Unreal.
He is in
it's
here,
unreal.
and he is carrying on a conversation like no other on the YouTube short side.
But he's not watching because I saw him last Wednesday at practice, and he goes, "I saw your show again." I go, "Yeah, Cannon, I gave you a 1-minute shout out." He goes, "Well, I've never watched." So we'll see.
Oh, he's been engaging, shall we say?
He's engaging. He's a very engaging fifth grader.
Yeah, for a fifth grader, he's actually pretty good with his parlays because he's actually taking action from a half a dozen other guys in it right now. So fantastic stuff. If you guys could, and BP, do you have a 5% coming up? Do I understand correct?
No 5%, but we have won 6 in a row, Joe, in the NBA playoffs going back to Monday, hitting 80% now in the month of April in the NBA. That is number 1 at WagerTalk. That's pretty good. Proud of that. Was 3-0 yesterday. Again, like I said, we didn't care who wasn't playing for us, Joe. We took the Pelicans, we took the Bucks, we took the Clippers. They all cashed. I am sitting out tonight's NBA games, but I do have a game already circled for tomorrow that I will be firing on. 3 Major League Baseball plays on the docket. Ooh. We did well in baseball over the weekend. It was a 6-1 over all weekend between Saturday and Sunday. So like Steve, seeing them well, take advantage. Again, like he said, Steve, it's the last day to take advantage of that 10-day, getting 10 days for the price of 7, a $69 savings. WT.buzz/BP, as you see on screen, is the place to go.
Oh, outstanding. Way to point out the obvious. Okay, so we are good to go here. Certainly wish you guys the best of luck. Big shout out to the Oakland Athletics today for coming through. Way to stick it to the Yankees as a $2 underdog. Very good. We hope more of that here to come tonight here. But for those of you dabbling with the favorites here tonight, or those of you dabbling with the zigzags, best of luck with those plays. And don't forget, of course, we'll be back again tomorrow breaking down the next round of games. Hit that like button, that thumbs up button, and make plans to come back and join us again tomorrow. Catch you slipping. Appreciate it. You guys are the best. Oh, and by the way, if it's more of the big game breakdowns you're looking for in Best Bets, we've got it for you. Just go ahead and hit that video on your screen right now and see what other handicappers at WagerTalk have to say about these games. Best of luck. We'll see you again soon.